Hello, Molly. Thank you so much for being here on INFJ Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm super happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. I'm so happy you came. We met last week and we immediately hit it off. So I thought to invite you on the show and ask you about you and your INFJ entrepreneur journey. But mostly, I'm just interested in when did you discover that you are an INFJ and how was that process for you? If you could share that first.
Yeah, I think in high school we had to take it for a class, and then I actually got INFP in the beginning. Um, and then my best friend at the time, she's an INFP, so I think we were just kind of like feeding off each other. Middle school, I didn't really know who I was. And then I took the test again later, I think in I think it was college. And then I got INFJ, and I just got really into it because I was like, yeah, this is just hitting the nail on the head. I'm like identifying with all this stuff. I got really into what is it? There's like a deeper, um, there's like FE and like SI. You know what I'm talking about? Like
Yeah, the cognitive functions.
the cognitive functions. Yeah, I got really into that. Also, I got kind of obsessed with it for like a couple months. But yeah, that's basically how I figured out.
Yeah, and so you were saying that there were lot of moments that you kind of understood yourself. Like, what were the things that you identified with as an INFJ that you didn't think that other people also, you
Yeah,
know?
it's like the duality of being analytical but also being a feeler. And then that it's kind of like an identity crisis almost. It's like, yeah, I feel like I get along with people that are really logical, but also some of the things that they say are, and it's like kind of cut and dry and not exactly how I feel. And so, but then I'll have feeling friends, and then I'll be a little bit too analytical with them. And so it's just like you're just this weird kind of mesh of the two. I think that's what I identified the most strongly with. And then yeah, like obviously like being compassionate and things like that. It's like yeah.
Do you have a lot of how are your friendships, by the way? Like you said to me like you are the most extroverted INFJ type that there is out there.
Yeah, I think I've become that though. When I was like younger, I mean, I could go days at a time without talking to anybody. I would just be stuck, head in a book kind of a person. Um, and then in high school or in middle school, my best friend was INFP. We were just like very bonded. Like we were like each other's only friend. And then in high school, I kind of like expanded my network a little bit. I had an ENFJ best friend. And then now, like especially with starting my own business, it's like I'm talking to more people than I've ever had in my life. Yesterday was just back to back calls from morning to evening, and I just like never thought that I could, be be
Do
somebody that
it.
could talk to this many people before. And then yeah, I went to this INFJ actually like Bay Area, which is where I live. Um, like a Facebook meetup, I think, and I felt like I was the most extroverted, but maybe it was just like the environment. Everyone was like a little bit more shy. It was like the first time meeting everybody, but yeah.
Yeah. But do you feel like, especially these INFJ, like local INFJ meetups, I don't know what it is. I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening to this, but there are like so many weirdos. I don't know.
Oh
It's the,
no.
the cosplay or whatever, into like anime and what actually doing cosplay and they're white, not Asian, but
Got
it's
it.
just like,
I don't think I experienced, or maybe I didn't talk as deeply to the people in that. I only went to one event. But yeah, everyone just seemed like kind of quiet. But also there were people that like were not INFJs in the group, and we didn't really um, go in depth.
mm,
So
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but for me, it was the experience. I had just like so many weirdos and like very artistic as well. I think artistic people,
mm,
like whether it's graphics, like just like artists are really in the INFJ gene somehow. So talk to me about your journey with entrepreneurship. Is this something that you like kind of were doing as a child, like where is entrepreneurial is just like, or it just came to you as like an alternative of like getting a job?
Yeah, so you know, I in high school I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't really have a strong passion. I mean, this is random, but like for multiple summers, I would go to Japan to do a farm stay and stay at dairy farms. And so I was like, I like cows. I guess I like cows. Like, maybe I'll just do that. When I was applying, I really didn't know which box to tick and what I should major in. So I was like, okay, I'll do dairy science. I got accepted into Cal Poly, local college here, and then I was doing that for a couple, like a 1.5 years, and I just realized like this isn't for me. I'm not. A lot of people around me were like ready to take over the family farm. Like I was like not. I wasn't really like I liked cows, but the agriculture part of it wasn't really. I just realized this isn't my passion. So I dropped out of college. I was kind of at a low point in my life, moved back with my parents, and figuring out what I wanted to do. And I realized like yeah, like I could maybe marry the two things that I like, which is like I like being creative, but I'm not like a super artist. And I also like I've always liked computers. I've always loved tech. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can kind of combine the two. I'll do web design. So I was looking for colleges that have that major, and then CSU Monterey, which is another local college, they offered that major. So I went with them, and then I graduated. You know, and then after I graduated, I met this girl at a party, who I'd known from high school, but I hadn't talked to in a while. And she was like, "Oh, you just graduated from web design? Like I just started a web design company." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So then she was like, "Oh, do you want to work with me?" So I was like, "Sure." She was always like the very extroverted one, very like just disciplined, always coming up with so many ideas and just making them happen. So I was kind of like, okay. Like she was always like, the person that makes it happen. I'm kind of like the quiet behind the scenes person that would do the design work and things like that. So we kind of worked really well together. And then she grew the company into like, now she I think has like 8 employees or something like that. She is definitely a go-getter. And she was always kind of trying to like encourage me to leave the nest, and be like, okay, you can do this. You can start your own business. And I was like, I don't know. I like so scared of talking to clients, and like, I would have this like big fear of like this imposter syndrome of like when I was talking to clients, like one of my biggest fears was them being like, well, you're the designer. Then why don't you know this? Or where should I put this? You're the designer. You're the expert. You tell me, kind of thing. Like I was really scared of like clients like that. So I was like, I don't know if I can handle that on my own. And it like, I worked with her. I worked for her company for about 4 years. And then as of like 6 months ago, so this is new. 6 months ago, I like finally just bit the bullet, and then decided to be an entrepreneur. And like so far I in the 6 months I've like just I feel like I've grown exponentially, right? From going to someone that couldn't even talk to clients. If I had 2 client calls in one day, I would be like, oh my, what a stressful day. And now it's just like back to back calls, and I'm taking it more in stride, so I'm learning a lot about myself.
That's so awesome. So that must have been quite a big jump for you, right? To go from a sheltered environment to taking a leap in your own company and starting your own business.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. I feel like, going from having a stable income to having this like variable income, being an entrepreneur was like something that was like probably one of my biggest fears that was holding me back. And like I still, I'm working on that like scarcity mindset of like, I don't know if I was telling you this last time we talked, but like some weeks I'm like, I'm the best web designer in the world, like everybody wants to hire me, I'm making so much. And then like the next week I'm like shaking in a corner in the dark, like just like, oh my god, how can I go on? But it's just like so many ups and downs, I feel like.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that before, but I think a lot of listeners can relate to that as well. Especially entrepreneurs' journey is like ups and downs, and with client work, sometimes you have no control over like when someone is gonna hire us or sign with us. And I think for me, especially the difficult part was to be always proactive to make sure that I do as much as I have control over. You know, I have control over whether or not I'm going to a networking event. I have control over like the relationships I'm building. Like those are the things that I have control over. I cannot make someone sign with me and like pay me, right? There's no way I can rush them into making a decision.
Yes. And then also, I was talking about this to somebody the other day. It was like, people can smell it too. Even when you're not trying to, like, if when you're desperate for making the sale, like, people can tell even though you think you're playing it off, And when I'm coming into a consultation call, like, relaxed and chill, like, people want to work with me. And when I'm just like, oh, should we make our next, when can I talk to you next? That's when people aren't interested in that kind of energy a lot of the time.
And do you think when you have this like rush energy, like I need to close this or I'm gonna be homeless? I mean, you won't be homeless, but you know what I mean. Like, do you
Yes.
feel like those clients are rejecting you if you are pushing?
Yeah, like I feel like the first off, I attract my ideal client when I'm chill and when I'm myself. And when I am kind of in that more desperation mode, I'm not being myself. And so I'll be attracting the wrong clients, and then also, yeah, I feel like I'm deterring. I make more sales, when I am just being myself and more chill about it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I'm so happy to hear that, but it's not something you can control. I think the best idea for you is just not get on sales calls when you are like on the anxious mood, like, rocking yourself in your chair. Like, do not get on calls like when you are like that.
Exactly, exactly.
Just
Trying to like calm myself is something that I've been working on as well.
A lot of entrepreneurs. I'm checking like the group intake forms, and a lot of them are still at the stage of like I'm scared to like what will happen. Let me check like some of the things that you were saying, and I wonder if we can maybe treat some of the issues. The first one is very common, is like overcoming perfectionism. Like, what
Oh,
was your obviously you have to overcome some of the perfectionism in order to be doing what you do. Like, what was your way of coping with that?
yeah, it's still definitely something that I'm still working on, but I feel like I've gotten a lot better with it. I'm trying to think of a specific example. I feel like with design work, okay, this is an example, is I'm thinking if I'm going to scale this business, then I'm going to have to hire other people. And I'm worried about micromanaging because if I'm handing off design and under my company's name, then to me, it's like it has to be perfect or it has to be my design aesthetic. And design is subjective, right? The more and more I do this, the more I learn that is that what looks good to me does not look good to everybody else, and everybody has their own design style, and that's okay, right? And me trying to like force something or trying to perfect somebody else's work is something that I know I'll struggle with once I do hire somebody. So I think that sort of perfectionism definitely exists inside of me that I'm trying to work on. And another one too is like I always feel like I need to, and this might be a good thing, is like if I get an email, a lot of times emails are start to stack up, and like I need to respond to these people by this time, or else I'm not a good web designer and I'm not a professional person. That kind of thing is also something that I'm trying to work on. Not putting myself down for, maybe being a couple hours late, even though, it makes me look a little bit slightly unprofessional.
Does it though? Because I think that this sounds like a boundary slash people pleasing issue to me.
Oh yeah. Oh, it definitely is. Yeah. I'm thinking in my head that that person, is just sitting around waiting for my email when they're probably just going about their life, and entrepreneurs are so busy. They're probably just like, "Oh yeah. Oh, here's her email. I forgot that, I even talked to her a couple days ago." So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that because I think I had the same experience early on. And to be honest with you, like you just saw before this call, I had one of my clients like Slack channel me, like, hey, are you working? So probably there's something there. And I said, I'll just handle it whenever I can, right?
Right.
So I definitely struggle with the same thing that you did. Like I felt like I need to answer right away, or I'm like a lazy, or I'm like not doing anything. Or they might think that I'm slacking off or running away with their money or something. I don't know. I had these like crazy thoughts in my head. But what ended up happening is I cultivated a lot of clients who also did not respect my boundaries. They would call me on Saturdays and like, hey, can you fix this now? And I'm like, what the fuck, no, it's Saturday. But even sometimes it still happens like, hey, I know it's the weekend, but
Right.
that's how they start a message. I'm like, okay, so I'm not gonna touch this until Monday because we have to constantly like we're responsible of how our other people treat our boundaries and like respect us, and we need to be like, give some space in between and without feeling guilty. So that's definitely the process.
Definitely. Yeah, I think when you're an entrepreneur, people just expect you to be working like 24/7. But then, if you're talking to a company, you're kind of like, okay, office hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's and if you reach out to somebody on Saturday, you don't expect an email back until Monday. That's common. But yeah, I find that too. It's like setting boundaries is something
It's
that
hard, right?
is
Yeah.
hard.
So, how about sales? Because the second thing that I see coming up in the group intake forms, like as far as like entrepreneurial challenges, one of them is promoting myself, selling myself. Like, how was that journey for you, and how did you overcome? Because obviously you have clients and you're working with them.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I feel like it with time I've gotten a lot more confident because in the beginning I was like, "Oh, I'm so new and what if I don't know how to answer this question?" I'm specifically a Squarespace designer, so I'm like, "Okay, well if I'm calling myself a Squarespace expert, then I have to know everything about it. And what if somebody asks me a question and I can't answer them, then I look like a fraud." That's what I was thinking. And honestly, with time and I've been doing this for 4 years now, I can answer almost every question. And if I can't, I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, yeah, just tell them honestly I don't know, like let me get back to you on that. I'm more comfortable saying that, where before I was like shaking in my boots and being like, I need to know. Like, this probably ties into the perfectionism of like, yeah, I need to know the answer to every question, or else how do I sell myself as an expert, right? They're paying me money. Like, I need to be like on my A game.
What about your journey in landing clients? Like, how was that? Like, not like self-selling, but like that smooth conversation. Like, hey, that's what I do. Like, how was that process for you?
Yeah, I think that also ties into, I think we were talking about just like authentically being myself. That has helped me with my confidence as well. And also being like, um, you know, if I'm being myself and I'm showing up authentically and they don't want to work with me, then they just weren't the right clients for me, right? It's not that I was doing anything wrong or I was saying anything wrong. It's just that we don't align, and that happens too, right? With like friendships or dating, it's just like, yeah, it just wasn't a match, right? And I have to think about it in the same way with these sales calls as well.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, your main, I guess not idea, but your main advice was to just be yourself, and don't try to make shit up that you're not, and just be authentic. And people can smell that, so that's amazing. What is your plan for the future? Do you have any? Because INFJs, they say that we have these huge visions for ourselves. I wonder what's yours.
Yeah, okay. So I always have so many business ideas that I actually want to come to fruition, right? But right now, I'm working with web design, and I do want to grow this because right now my model is, you hire me for a website, I make it for you, and it's kind of like goodbye, And some people will be like, "Oh, do you offer social media? Do you offer SEO work or anything like that?" And I'm like, "No, I just refer it out." And like we were talking, to have something more stable, that monthly recurring revenue, I was thinking about a different business model. So right now I just signed on this new client that is a lawyer, and he not only wants me to set up his website, he also wants me to set up like a back-end CMS. So it's like collecting e-signatures, kind of client tracking, and just making a law firm, bringing it to the 21st century essentially. And so instead of them paying me, one lump sum, it would be like over the course of a year, I'll set up this website and the CMS for you, and then it'd be more of more setting up a system rather than just setting up a design and a website. So that's my long-term goal, because I also feel like this is a scalable type of business where if I'm setting up systems, honestly, I feel more comfortable handing off like system setup to somebody else rather than like the design aspect. But that's something I'm working on. And then if lawyers isn't the field that I want to go, I can still take this model and use it in a different industry. So that's kind of where my head is at.
That's so good. I'm so glad that, you are finding something that's more like a long term. Because I think what you mentioned before, that it seems to me that you worked like, hey, here's a website, done, and buy. And so there has to be a way that you have monthly recurring revenue and just like have long-term clients and just have them, have a couple of good long-term clients, and you can already feel like you can grow from there versus try to hustle every month and find a new one, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I just want a little bit more peace. Is and maybe this isn't what it'll bring me peace, but in my head I'm like, okay, as soon as I reach that milestone of having that monthly recurring revenue, then I'll finally feel peace. And maybe that's something that I need to work on as well. Who knows?
You were talking a lot about having had space and having that peace. Once I have the peace. So you're saying that your difficulty is the ups and downs, the fact that sometimes you have, you know, good months or good weeks, and sometimes you have uh, not so good week. What would be your advice to someone who's just starting out and you don't know how to manage those emotions? Or maybe you're not you're not there just yet yourself, but let me know if you have anything to share.
What's been helping me is just having trust. I think maybe because of like my upbringing and the conversations that we had about finances, it's giving me this like scarcity mindset. Even though every month like I do well, like I'm doing well, right? Like there's no month where I have $0 in my bank account, and my fear is that I will, right? And so just continuing to like over time I just have more faith now, and being like, is this a rational thought that I'm having, that I'm going to be homeless and I'm going to have $0 in my bank account? I'm like, no, it's not, because this has never happened before, right? It's like, let me just look at the proof is that, the longer I do this, I'm having more confidence, because I'm kind of like disproving it to myself.
So what you're saying is that the experience itself, that you never went like broke $0 on your account, and just like relying on the proof and having more of those experience and collecting more of those experience help you override that irrational fear of going homeless.
Yeah, it's
Amazing.
like I have to have a little bit more faith, right? It's like, you can go down that rabbit hole of like what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. But at the end of the day, it's like the worst case scenario isn't always even that bad, right? It's like the worst case scenario is, if I do have $0 in the bank account, I can live with my dad. Thankfully I have that support system, and it's like, and that wouldn't be the worst life in the world, right? It's like, even though that wouldn't happen, if you like keep going down that rabbit hole, the worst case scenario usually isn't you now entering a homeless shelter. Right? Like, there's a lot more steps involved to that.
I know. Yeah, that's so crazy that how our minds are constantly in this like survival mode, sometimes trying to, warn us from being broke or becoming broke. It's so crazy.
Mm, exactly.
Yeah. Where I wanted to go is a bit of like money and pricing and asking for, charging. I don't know how that journey has been to you. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially like shy introvert entrepreneurs, they kind of have this fear that, oh, it's gonna be too high, and they're trying to almost like babysit the clients and like, oh, I think they can afford this much, so I'm gonna charge this much. Or they are like too giving, they're super giving with their time or with the effort. What has been your experience with that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it is something that I struggle with. Right, I work with a lot of small businesses, so that's where you know, the pricing part starts to get difficult where I'm like, oh, I'll pre-assume, oh gosh, this lady is just selling soap or something, right? I'm like, there's no way that she could afford thousands of dollars. So, but I still want this small business to be able to thrive and to have a good website design and be able to sell her products and things like that. So I'm like, oh, I'll just mark down my price, right? And I don't know. I'm still struggling with that. I'm like, is that a bad thing? Right? Am I devaluing myself? But I also want small businesses to thrive, right? Or, on the other hand, some people are like, never change your pricing, right? If people can't afford you, then they can't afford you, and those aren't the clients for you, right? So I'm kind of stuck in that in between of setting my price. And before my price was a lot lower, and then the reason why I changed it is people were like, that's way too low, you need to price it higher. So it was basically other people telling me that I need to price higher. So but it's still definitely something that I struggle with, right? And I don't know if that ties into like self-worth or devaluing myself or not valuing myself enough or something like that. But
I don't
money
think
is
it's that.
mm,
Yeah, but I don't think it's that. I think it's just that you are so compassionate. I think it's your compassion. I think it's that. Because if you want to really help someone, you don't want money to be in the way of that, because you believe in the business and you want to help. So it's a mission driven type of thing, right? But you need to pay your bills and you need to have like a business, right? So you need money. But at the same time, you really want to help because you care about, helping them.
yeah.
I think it's that.
Right, definitely. And like I think about it from my own perspective too of like thousands of dollars is a lot of money, to like most people. And so to ask that of somebody just seems like a lot, you know what I mean? Even though yes, they are like I have to think about it in terms of like yes, they are making an investment in themselves and their business and you're helping them make money, right? So this is a good investment for them. And I have to like think about it in that way, right? Instead
Yeah,
of
I think
I'm just taking. I'm also giving.
exactly. Exactly. It's not, I mean, there is always like a value exchange. It's not like you are just taking their money, but you're giving a website for them that then they can get more clients, more sales, like whatever they want to. And if it wasn't for you, then they wouldn't be able to make more sales. So you're facilitating those things. I think it's just that's where you should be, thinking when you're charging. I had the same issue when I started out. Like I charged way too low. And even when I started, that was 4 years ago, by the way, when I was starting like way too low. And even then I had clients who were like, oh my God, that's too expensive. So I did advertisement for like a small yoga studio and they were like, oh, we can't afford to pay like $500 per month for someone to do our ads. And then, I was like, okay, maybe I need to slash this price into half. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? So, yeah, we had like 1 or 2 month campaign, but they had no money to then pay for the ad costs, which was like, I was asking them like $200 or something to just start out. And they were like, oh, we can't continue anymore. We can't afford, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, they landed clients. They had new people coming to the studio. They were like, oh, we see there are so many people coming. They're signing up for classes. And so that was that. But when you start out, you just really want to help. And I think that is where you are like, okay, I want to help, but I can't help everyone. I mean, there's only 24 hours a day. And the people who can afford me, then they should have access to me. Then, if I have all the money in the world, I'm hitting like $1 million a year, then maybe I can give back to a charity or like whatever, that I can give back, or I can set up a foundation, whatever, I can be more generous. But I'm not at the point where I pay charity for other people because they can't afford me.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could make these for free and still be able to like make a living, I would do it, right? I like doing it. I like working and collaborating with people. But yeah, gotta pay rent, right?
Yeah, I know. It was so hard to reconcile those thoughts. The other thing that for me, and I wanted to say something about this, but I totally lost my train of thoughts. Great. Amazing. Do you have ADHD, by the way? Like,
I
do
do,
you
yeah,
have?
I do.
Yeah, okay. So I'm like, what the fuck I was wanting to say. But it was related to pricing, I think, and like money. I don't know, what was it? Oh yeah, that I was so resentful of money. Is that I had like clients, like really good clients I genuinely wanted to work with, but they couldn't afford me. So the deal did not go through, and I was so resentful of money. Like this is an obstacle of me helping people. I don't know if that's something that you experienced before. Like I can't believe I have to live in this world where money is a thing and we have to be, working for it. And I don't know. That was
Yeah.
a
Yeah, like I sometimes like yeah, I resent the fact that like I am, I'm thinking of a business model of like how to make the most money when like that's not really like what my value is like how do I make so much money? But like I think it ties into like also I want to have peace too, right? It's like I have that I live in California. It's really expensive to live here. Like, I still need to think about money, even though I don't want to. Nobody wants to think
yeah.
about money, really, really.
Yeah, I know. It was just like super hard to kind of
Right.
But I think for a lot of entrepreneurs that are struggling with this, like charging your price and then raising your prices and just like, having clients who accept them and who don't. So I think that's just part of the deal. I want to see if there's any topic that networking as an introvert. I want you to talk about this because I think you are a pro networker and you're an introvert.
I'm not a pro, but I'm doing a lot of networking and starting to maybe get the hang of it, or I didn't know what networking was, right? I was like, in the beginning, when I first started the business, I was like, okay, I'm branching off, and now what? It's like, how do I find clients, right? And so I was posting on Facebook groups and being like, how do you guys find clients? How do you begin? And people were like, oh, join your local BNI, which I was like, what's a BNI? It was like a local chamber of
Business
commerce,
network.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so I joined that, and then I didn't really have a really good experience with that. People were double my age around, probably, which is fine. I mean, I didn't have a problem with that, but I was getting like a lot of condescending comments in that group, and so I was kind of like, this is weird. And so thankfully, a guy in the group, he was like, hey, let's set up a one-on-one, right? And I didn't know that networking you do one-on-ones, so I was kind of like, why is this guy reaching out to me? So I did a one-on-one with him, and he was like, hey, how do you like BNI? I actually have my own networking group called VEETS. It's VEETS. And he was like, why don't you come on to Veets? So I was like, okay, like, what do I have to lose? I'll give it a shot. I was very nervous. And I came into Veets, and it was a completely different environment. Like, I feel everyone was like super welcoming and empathetic, and I think once you find a good networking group, it'll make you feel really comfortable. And also, the more often you go to these networking groups and you show your face, that's what I'm finding is the most important, right? You can't just pop into a networking group and it's like, hi, my name's Molly King, Clementine Design Studio, goodbye. And then the whole point is to continue seeing the right people or the same people so that you're top of mind for them, right? I think that's also like a good way to make friends. Is like, that's why you make friends when you're in a classroom environment, is because you're seeing the same people every single week, and so that like adds that familiarity. And then on top of that, right, when you go to these networking events, a lot of the times people will want to do one-on-ones with you. And then when you do these one-on-ones, you really, and if you show up as your authentic self, you really will attract the right people that want to help you and will keep you in mind for clients. So that's been my experience with networking. Like, I still definitely get nervous, when I have to speak in front of everybody and everyone's quiet and I see just a bunch of little faces on the Zoom screen. But it's something that, like, with time, I'm getting used to, for sure. So far, I've had only good experiences from networking. There will be like your occasional MLM person that's just trying to sell you something, and they'll kind of sneak it in. But other than that wasn't even a negative experience. It's just like a different experience. But for the most part, though, I've had only positive experiences with everybody because everyone's in the same boat as you, right? Everyone else is an entrepreneur. Which means, first off, most people we're all trying to sell to each other, is kind of what it sounds like sometimes. But also, you get to hang out with like-minded people, right? Now I feel like I have friends all over the world because, I mean, same with you, right? You started your networking group. I feel like we've kind of become friends now. It's like it's just really cool that you can connect with other people that are doing the same things as you. Because like you'll have your friends, and like I have my friends that aren't entrepreneurs, and of course, we still get along, but sometimes they don't understand the struggles that comes with entrepreneurship. So it's really cool to be able
Yeah.
to help other people like that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think, especially for like INFJs, like struggling to find clients, that was super, super useful that you shared that. And they're gonna go, what's a weeds? What was it again? Can you spell it for
Oh
us?
yeah, it's Veets, Veets. It's like virtual meets is the name, and the guy that runs it, Matt Dubois, he's a really good guy. So he definitely fosters like this really sweet, nice environment, and I tell them that they're like my networking family. I'm always like, love you guys, thanks to my networking family. So yeah,
That's
shout out
so
to Matt.
sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. I think that was super helpful for INFJs looking for clients. Like, how do I get started? I think that was like super, super useful. My experience with networking groups were kind of the same. I don't think I found my go-to networking group. So I went like rogue and I started to do like my Facebook, what I did is basically just use my Facebook as like my like my business. So I have all these friends and I just like, hey, that's what I'm doing. When I started out, like just started using my Facebook as my main business, communication, like self promotion channel. And that's why, people in my hometown, like, or like they just saw like what I do and they naturally like came to me like, hey, I saw that that's what you do, or sharing something. So I think for my journey, it was like I went to the in-person networking groups. They were like, hey, kid, they were divorced or like 50s plus. So that was not my gang at all. So I just did Facebook and I started to add people that could be a good fit for my clientele. And it just kept growing and growing and posting, videos, starting my podcast, writing book, like all of that thing. And that's organically snowballed into where people now know what I do and they come to me specifically because they know what I do. And it took time, obviously. But my very first clients were like networking as well, like in person networking. It's just that after COVID hit and everything,
Right.
it became really hard. So I was forced to like build out my Facebook profile and just use it as my main business channel. And I think that's also a good way to kind of go about it if you don't have any options where you can, meet people in your area.
Yeah, definitely. I find it's easier. I mean, definitely for me to be typing something out in a Facebook group or having these online meetings than like the in person. I mean, I'm going to an in person one tonight, but I definitely find it to be easier, especially being introverted, is you don't have to leave the house. And yeah, it's just a little easier to strike up conversation for me than having to hop around in person and talk to each person.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned as well is that the networking events are always people come with an agenda and everyone is like, I want to sell what I do. And for me, I was a bit put off by that initially because every conversation I was having, I felt like some guys were like bouncing from one person to the other, like who has the clout, next one, you're not good, like no bueno, next one. And there were a lot of people like that definitely come and they kind of like see where you're at, like, are you a good asset? Are you, do we need to keep talking to you or like, do we need to keep going? And then they actually like hopping from people to people. So I think they're everywhere, obviously. But for me, that was a bit like everyone came with their own agenda, and that was a bit put off by that.
Yeah, I totally get that. There's definitely some people I've hopped on one-on-ones with, and like they just have a whole PowerPoint slide, and it's just like sell, sell, sell. But then on the other hand, like I'm just so surprised by how many people are just willing to help me. Like just starting off my business, I'm like from the forefront. That's who I am. I'm just vulnerable from the beginning and being like, I'm just starting with this. I just tell them this is what I tell them. I'm like, I'm naturally introverted. Networking's pretty new to me, but I'm I'm getting the hang of it, and I'm really enjoying connecting with people. And a lot of times people go, "Oh my god, I'm an introvert too." Like, and I'm surprised by how many introverts there seems to be in the entrepreneur world. And we're all just kind of faking it till we make it, I guess. But like, a lot of times people will just, so many genuine people I've been meeting, and like people that just really, really care about my business growth, and just giving me just free tips, just all around. You know, being like, "Oh my gosh, welcome to the entrepreneurial journey." Like, everyone's just been so nice. You know, you'll get those people that are definitely just trying to sell you on things and don't really care about you, and that's what it seems like. They don't really care about getting to know you and things like that. But definitely been meeting a lot of genuine people lately. So
That's so good. But I think, like you said from the beginning, and that's like gonna be the overarching theme that we keep going back to is your own authenticity, you know?
yeah.
I don't know how INFJs are, but definitely maybe it's like the perfectionism, like putting on like a facade, like you got your shit together. I don't know if that's something that you felt, but being vulnerable, admitting like, hey, I'm just starting out, you know, I'm looking to get more clients. Do you know anyone, you know,
Yeah.
by chance, you know, like even to admitting that, I think that takes a lot of courage and vulnerability because most people like, I'm fine, I'm all good, I have all the clients in the world, like I don't need any more, you know.
Right, exactly. And you're not just being like, "Oh, help me," you know, just give me handouts, right? You're being vulnerable, right? And I feel like people are attracted to that, the vulnerability, especially with like, yeah, with networking. Sometimes people are showing like a facade, right? And I never used to know what it meant when people are like, "Be yourself, be yourself." I was like, it's just like one of those things that people say, but I didn't know what that meant, right? And it's just like, yeah, just relaxing and not thinking about, oh, I should say this so that they'll think this of me, or I should say this so they'll think that of me, right? It's just like not thinking too many steps ahead, and just being able to relax and say really what's on your mind, I feel like is what it means to be authentically yourself, is what I'm learning.
Wow, that's so profound. Thanks so much for sharing that. No, I think that's super interesting, and I think it's important for the listeners as well to embrace, you know, whether it's, you know, you being anxious, you know, you came to this call and you said, "Ah, my anxiety." How is your anxiety now, by the way? Is it getting better?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like my anxiety has gotten tempered a lot. I mean, the biggest thing is, yeah, that I'm so I didn't realize, right, like how much entrepreneurship is just like a lesson on yourself. And I think I was talking to this about this last time. It's like, oh, I thought entrepreneurship and starting my own business was learning like all of these things, all these external things, but it's more like just a whole huge lesson on myself. And what I'm learning about myself is this big like scarcity mindset. Probably comes from childhood, right? Probably comes from my parents. My parents weren't necessarily good with money all the time. And so now I'm scared of also being like that. So I like overcorrect, and now I'm like, oh, gotta stash everything in the bank, and like, should I have to hold all this money close to my chest? But this is like now something that I'm like realizing that I need to work on, right? And especially talking to other people and being like, like how can you expect people to invest in you if you're not willing to even invest in yourself, right? Because I was working on, oh, maybe I should pay this business coach, but oh, it's a lot of money and I don't know if I want to spend that much money. And that's what somebody told me, is like, yeah, like how can you expect anyone to spend money on you if you're not going to spend money on yourself? I was like, oh, so true.
And it's so profound. And to be honest with you, I've found that to be true. Like the minute I started to like invest in myself, I also attracted people who were investing in themselves. And one of my client, he just dropped 120K on Dan Locke's mastermind per year. It's like 120K per year membership. And I'm like, holy fucking shit, like this is wild.
Uh-huh.
Like that's the level of like investment like these people
Right.
like do in themselves because they want to get better.
Right.
But the same goes back to you. If you are a type who invests, you know, in yourself, and then you're going to attract the same people. If you don't invest in yourself, if you're scared, then you're going to get the scared people that they're also scared to invest in you and your, you know, clients, you know, like your designs, and they're going to be like trying to negotiate down the price. And I think that's what really was a profound moment for me to realize.
For sure. And it's also like taking that risk, right? As entrepreneurs, we're probably this is a risk in itself, is to work for yourself. And so just like not being so concerned about, taking another risk and maybe spending a couple thousand here, thousand there to invest in your business, right? It will pay off a lot of the time.
Yeah. And if not, it's going to be a great lesson. So,
Exactly, exactly.
what not to do.
Yeah.
Business 101, do not invest in this person. Yeah, I think that's definitely is. And I love that you mentioned that how this journey is really about learning yourself because like you said, you have to manage your own anxiety, you have to manage your own emotion, you have to manage your own like thoughts sometimes, like the scarcity mindset, like going back to like what the fuck am I gonna do tomorrow. I had this reoccurring fear, and I'm quite not over it just yet, but I felt like if I get sick, like my business is gone, because like what if I can't work anymore? It's me, I am the main person, I need to be like healthy, or else I'm gonna get broke, that was my it's still in my head a lot, but thankfully it's been well, I work from my bed even when I'm sick.
Right, right. I've had that same exact fear. Is I'm like, oh my god, what if I get cancer tomorrow and then all my savings are just disappeared? Like just that whole scarcity mindset, I guess.
Yeah, but it's important to like manage that and learn about yourself. And yeah, it's been wild, and I'm sure for you it's gonna be a very rewarding one. Like maybe like 5 years from now, like you and I gonna be like, hey, remember the time when we were like so scared to like lose our money and go homeless? Like remember that?
Right. Oh,
And
I would love to get to that point for sure. Working on
yeah,
it.
I'm sure you will. Well, thank you so much for being here for this episode, for being honest and vulnerable and sharing all the good tips that you learned with other INFJ entrepreneurs. Where can they find you if you guys, by the way, if you guys need a website or you need some graphics, Molly is your person and
Yeah.
she can help you make your dreams come true.
For sure. So, my Instagram handle is the same as my website domain URL. So, it's just Clementine, like the fruit, Clementine Design Studio. So you can find me on Instagram, or you can just pop that into your browser. You can find my website.
I'm just gonna make sure to link that under this episode so that people can find out, more about you and get on a call with you. Can you, by the way, can you take on more clients at this point?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, you are. You are accepting more. Cool. So,
Yeah.
guys, if you're listening to this, Molly still have some space. Please hit her up. And if you need an amazing website on Squarespace, she can help you make that happen. I'm sure a lot of you guys are still at the phase. By the way, a lot of you guys are still at the phase where they are just starting out. So I'm sure they need a website. And if you guys have a website and it looks like it's still like early 90s design, and you need to kind of refresh it to match today's world, and definitely Molly can help you with that too.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice being here.
Thanks so much for being here. Last question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh gosh, what advice would I give? I think that's the whole kind of overarching theme for this call is just to be yourself, right? I had no idea what that meant. Um, I always really wanted to be liked, right, and wanted to fit in, and so I would keep changing who I was to meld somebody else. And it's okay to just like be, a little weird, or like I feel like with as INFJs, you're a little offbeat, right? And it's okay to like not be like everybody else, and you will attract the right people when you are authentically yourself. When you're not, you attract people with the persona of people that aren't like you, right? Because you're not being you. So just be yourself. It's as cheesy as it is. It really is like it's so important.
Be yourself, guys. Thank you so much, Marley, for being here. Thank you for being a guinea pig for this second episode. And again, you guys hit Molly up if you need a cool website on Squarespace. Thanks so much for being here.
All right, thanks.